On the virtual reality, how similar is that to life experience? Can it actually replace it in different situations and be better?
I think your question was how similar is existing VR technology to life experiences?
Right. And could some virtual reality experience actually replace and be better than the life experience?
You know, I think we're in the 300 baud modem days of virtual reality. It's pretty amazing what we can do now, and I hope you have a moment to try out some of the systems, but it's going to be so much better very soon. In terms of how realistic things are, I think they're realistic enough that we can engage the brain and do a therapeutic intervention very easily. So, but try it. You'll see if you have time for our demos here.
Skip, do you have a perspective?
Yeah, you know, I don't think that virtual reality is going to replace the full rich experience of everyday life. Virtual reality is just something that simulates or mimics an environment in which we can do things that you can't do so well in the everyday world, like control stimuli or capture performance under tightly controlled conditions. So I think that you know, we should be looking at it as how can we take something we know is good in everyday life in terms of an assessment or a treatment approach and try to find a way to amplify or extend those things by using very controlled virtual reality simulations. I don't see the day where kids are going to want to rather go to a virtual park than to go to a real park with a seesaw and a slide or whatever they have in parks these days. I think, you know, we're a little ways from that, but we'll use it for a lot of productivity and life enhancement purposes. But I don't think it's going to reduce our desire to be in full breathing, touching, smelling reality.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Great. All right.
While we're waiting for that, any questions for Chris Chin from a technology perspective?
Nice.
All right.
Hopefully we'll have sound here.
Skip, you ready?
All right. All good. Okay.
Yeah, I was just
Oh, you have a
talking.
question? Oh, so go ahead, ask a question.
Tell us a little bit about haptics and other types of systems that are coming online, and I think that would be perfect.
Sure. Yeah. So the question's about. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. So the question's about haptics and other types of systems that are coming online in the future. So as you could tell, we had controllers that are being tracked. We have our head through the HMD, which is the head-mounted display being tracked. We also have things like the tracker. The Vive tracker is basically an accessory that uses the same tracking mechanism that you can attach to any appliance or even your legs and feet. So you actually now have full body tracking. From a haptic standpoint, there are gloves that actually are attached to the tracker that have vibration. There's actual audio-based haptic feedback, so you'll feel a minor sensation that comes out. There's wind feedback. There's a lot that's going on. We had a demo day yesterday for our accelerator program. We had 26 startup companies there. Someone had pain feedback, and that was accomplished through temperature. So they actually had temperature that gave you a sensation of heat and cold. They would combine that together to make pain and cause pain. So these things are actually all developing very rapidly. Kind of to what Sanjeev was talking about earlier, from a standpoint of understanding and sensing your emotion, there are now lots of technologies, lots of companies and startup companies out there that are sensing your eye movement, eye tracking, your facial expression, and it's really kind of quantifying all of your emotions and body. So a lot of biosensor activity happening that's leading to feedback to kind of make the whole loop full. So that's hopefully that answers.
Bernard, I know we're running a few minutes late here, and there's a party on the deck there. Is it okay to do a few questions with the panelists? Okay, 3 questions. Okay, and I know Skip and you have flights.
We'll pop up the demo. We don't wait till after the panel and people that want to stick around.
If anybody wants to try the actual equipment, it's available here. But I'll open up the session now just to, answer your questions first. I know everybody has to travel as well probably today. So we have Dr. Walter Greenleaf, Christian, and Dr. Skip Rizzo. So ask away. Okay, Beth.
Thank you. So, you know, we saw your mom do it, and that's really wonderful. One of the things that I hear when we're looking at installing both digital, any kind of digital tools, but especially VR, is people assume that there's going to be age limits on this, and that older people are not going to be interested. In your experience, I know, Walter, you've run the Center on Longevity at Stanford, and gotten to see Skip, you put this on a lot of folks, and Chris, a lot of experience. What's your experience with age limitations around this?
So the question is experience around age limitations across this domain.
I could pop in real quick and say, well, you know, I'm 63 and I'm designing things that I'm hoping are going to help me in 10 years. So the cohort of people that will be using these things as they evolve are people that kind of grew up kind of digital. You know, let's face it, a lot of older people, you know, it's foreign to them. You know, maybe email is as close as they get. And yeah, you're going to have a cell, but I swear to God, you put some of these headsets on an older person, there's tons of stuff on YouTube where you can see this. With the first time they just turn their head a second and everything updates and they're looking around, it's sort of a universal, you know, jaw dropper. You always see the headset and then, you know, like that. So it might be a little bit more work, and it might be a little bit more of a persuasive sell, and it might not be for everyone. But certainly, the aging population is becoming more and more populated with people like me and Walter here.
Except for people with vertigo and some other issues, which is not necessarily age specific, I haven't seen any problems. I think it's a natural user interface, and that's a lot easier than getting someone who is older or has a cognitive impairment to text or to type. So I haven't seen any barriers there.
Chris?
Yeah, I would say the only other thing was, you know, what I've seen in some of the maybe more elderly is they would prefer a seated experience because it can be a little bit discombobulating just because they're not used to it. But that's, you know, my parents are in their 80s and they had no problem. They did have that jaw-dropping moment, so for sure.
Bernard? Question?
What are the drivers and the inhibitors for getting this more universally used in clinic?
So drivers and inhibitors to be universally used in clinic.
It's really the same problems with any new medical technology. It's coming up with the business model. It used to be people didn't know what VR was. I don't think that's a problem now. I think it's more we haven't had adequate validation studies, and it's not the cost. It's not the usability. There's some great products in the pipeline, but I think the problem is understanding the workflow of the medical environment, pricing it the right way, having validation to facilitate the funding of the use of the technology. It's the business barriers more than anything else, not technology barriers, not research barriers.
And the health outcomes that you mentioned, Skip, are getting us to that point.
You know, I think that the popular media has done us a disservice and a favor. Disservice in some ways, you know, expecting that VR was going to, you know, overwhelm the gaming industry in the first year that these things started to come out. But it's also driven popular media awareness. So, you know, people know in our culture what VR is. Even if they haven't tried it, they got a general idea. The challenge I see, though, is there's a lot of those startup companies that popped up. A lot of those are driven by people that were in the game development industry. And you know, in that ecosystem, you build a cool game, people will love to play it, they'll pay to play it, and you're a success. They don't realize that in mental health, rehab, medicine, you know, you have to have some evidence. You have to have some data to support that what you're doing, even your specific application, is going to work. Otherwise, you know, then it's, you know, it's quackery, really.
And I think that's a very important point. I'm a little bit worried once, especially with mobile VR, a lot of people have a VR system, that it's a very powerful intervention. And I think the barrier is going to be low. People will download an app and
Right.
It won't necessarily be validated, and I think there will be, and you've seen the developers that just throw everything out there. They don't
Yep.
worry about validation.
It-
So I think the barrier for some of these apps is going to be too low in a way.
The classic case in point here is what I showed with the Fear of Public Speaking app. There's like 5 or 6 of them that you can easily download at a low cost and treat yourself with your fear of public speaking. Now, psychologists, we're kind of willing to accept that as like relatively benign. Everybody's got a little bit of fear of public speaking. It's a skill trainer, you get a little bit of practice. And so, all right, fair enough. But that starts a slippery slope, because what about the next one? Well, it's only fear of flying, or it's only, claustrophobia. But what that's doing is, it's opening the door to self-diagnosis and self-treatment in a lot of cases that people might go that route rather than get the real care or supervised care that they could benefit from. So I'm working with IEEE right now, putting together standards on this, and just recently wrote a piece that will appear in the journal Neuropsychology, both about breaking down barriers to care using VR, in addition to the efficacy, but also the idea of what are going to be our ethical standards for safe use of these things. And if anybody wants to contact me, I'll give you my card. I make my talk and all the videos freely available, as well as any papers that you might like on the data.
Bernard, you had a question?
Related to this.
And then you.
Are you seeing beyond the U.S. government interest from the payer community in healthcare towards helping support these VR development efforts?
Walter.
Yes, some of the insurance carriers have put together programs to facilitate trials and validation. They're as eager as anyone else to find out more effective tools for getting involved. And foundations are putting in support. I think it's a momentum that's gathering right now, and it's not just at the research level. It's sort of escaped the research lab at this point.
Yeah.
Anything that's going to lower costs and improve outcomes, right? That's the payer model. So they're very eager to see this being adopted, and there are some startups that are getting FDA approvals also, and that's kind of opening up the tents for everyone else.
Well, let me put a cautionary tale in. Sometimes the best ideas, no matter how much they're in your heart and you think you got something that's really going to fly, sometimes you get disappointed. We did a demo of the virtual patient toolkit a couple days ago to this mega VC guy, and it was demo went perfectly, and he looks at it and he goes, well, this is great, but it's kind of academic. I can't see who's going to pay for this. Are hospitals going to pay for better clinical training, or medical schools? How many medical students are there? Who's going to actually pay for it? And it's like, well, I thought anybody would want to pay for something that's going to improve, reducing errors and doing better case histories so that you can reduce costs on the back end and not assign so many diagnostic procedures. A good case history would and so it broke my heart, but maybe he's just sort of short-sighted. But the guy has a track record of making money, and so I have to listen to him, and say, well, is this an academic thing we should just put out into the wild and get fame and glory but never commercialize? Or
I think that's a good point, Skip. I think the business engineering needs to be done for this too. And most of the startups I see, either they know technology but they don't know medicine, or they know a little bit of medicine but they don't know technology, and almost none of them are very savvy when it comes to understanding the workflow or the reimbursement or the regulatory issues. And it really takes all 3 components in order to have a successful product.
Thank you very much, and thank all of our speakers for
Thank you.
being with us today.
You can